Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode recorded in EMERGO of Monster Party.
Monster Party! It's EMERGO! It's PERCEPTO!
Oh,
it's
mine!
fantastic!
If Monster Party is in the theater, scream!
Scream your lives!
Oh, we're already having fun.
Oh my gosh!
wonderful?
Oh, yes, I love it to scream for your life in a theater. How awesome is that?
Everybody, grab your official Monster Party viewers. So you can listen carefully through your ears.
Why do people
remove it from your ears if you don't want to hear
keep
it?
us in the picture?
Hey, well, this is all great, but hey, who are you, sir, Mr. PERCEPTO?
I am Matt Weinhold.
I am SHAWN SHERIDAN.
I'm Larry STROTHE.
And I'm James GONIS.
And for this episode, oh my goodness, this is something that's near and dear to our hearts. It's a person who guided us through our lives, who was like that wonderful, kind of scary but fun uncle.
Oh,
who
yes.
made our formative years so special and wonderful, helped to make us the monster kids that we are.
Yes.
And this person is...
Who is this person?
Thank you, Larry. This person is the legendary filmmaker, William Castle.
William Castle! Oh, man.
William
this
Castle.
Is so great. This guy's amazing. What
legend.
a life.
And you know, we've had listeners requesting we cover this topic for literally years now.
That's true. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you know what? To do it, we needed a great guest. We needed a guest who knows all about William Castle.
Yes, we
That's
did.
the only way we could do this.
An authority.
Yes.
And who
guys,
would be that person?
Oh my gosh, Matt, let me tell you. First of all, I'd like to give thanks for tonight's special guest. He is the founder of Automat Pictures, specializing in independent films, EPKs, and Blu-ray DVD commentary extras. Guys, he's an award-winning director, producer, and editor with hundreds of credits to his name. Guys, the amount of work that this man has produced and created is staggering. Our guest is responsible for a slew of amazing documentaries, which include The Fabulous Alan Carr, Tab Hunter Confidential, That Guy Dick Miller, I Am Divine, Love Gilda, and of course, the award-winning Spine Tingler, The William Castle Story, just to name a few people.
Now I see the connection. Okay, great.
Yes, guys, please join me in giving a Monster Party podcast welcome to Jeffrey Schwartz. Jeffrey Schwartz!
I'm exhausted by that intro.
Oh my God, Jeffrey, you've done
a nap.
But dude, the amount of stuff you've done, it just goes on and on. Did you ever sleep?
Well, you know, it helps to be obsessed with monsters when you were a little kid, and then you just follow that path, and it leads you to all kinds of interesting places. And here we are today.
Yes,
who would have thunk?
My parents certainly didn't think. They weren't so crazy about me watching all these monster movies, but they were patient with me, and they let me stay up late and watch the 1 a.m. movies on Channel 9 in New York. And I got a good education, and it sort of set me on a path. I'm sure you guys have a similar story.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing how like supportive parents can really kind of help shape that monster kid. You know, like they let them have that freedom to just explore the weird stuff, you know?
Even if they don't quite get it.
Yeah.
No, they didn't get it. They still don't get it.
Right.
I got lucky because my mom was a big sci-fi fan. And so at 5 o'clock, we would watch Star Trek during dinner. And my dad was like, why do we got to have the idiot box on? And like, I can't explain it to you, Dad.
William Castle.
William Castle, yes. Well, you know, William Castle was the first feature documentary that I made. And I got my start doing DVD extras back when DVDs were the hot new thing.
Yeah.
And but I wanted to make this William Castle movie for years, even before moving to Los Angeles. I had it in the back of my head. How do I make this movie? I got to figure out how to make this movie. And that was in the mid 90s, late 90s. And I knew that Sony aka Columbia, owned all those William Castle movies. So I started hearing about this new format, DVD. And I was wondering, maybe I could get involved with this. Maybe there's some way I could work on these William Castle movies, or maybe I can make this documentary with Sony, since they own all these movies. And I called them, and I met a guy there named Mike Stradford, who ran the home entertainment division at that time. And he invited me in for a meeting, and he just liked my vibe. And then he hired me to produce the first 2 DVD extras I did were for the Tom Savini Night of the Living Dead.
Oh,
Nice.
And I did a documentary called The Dead Walk, remaking a classic. And
I
the
know
second-
that. Yes.
Yes.
Very good.
I could tell you about going to Pittsburgh and sitting on Tom Savini's bed and watching that movie and doing his commentary. That was a great experience.
Oh, nice.
That's an underrated movie, by the way.
I was
That's
in bed with Tom Savini. And
That should be a
second one-
show.
Yeah. The second title was The Tingler. And
Oh.
those were the first DVD extras I got to make. I'm like, this is a pretty damn cool job. And it all started from there. And then so with Sony, they kept giving me these assignments. And the company started growing from there. But some of the early assignments were these William Castle movies. So I ended up doing the extras for a bunch of the William Castle releases. But it was like, what about the movie? What about the feature? So I just kept collecting the interviews, and then on my own time, just shooting more, shooting. And then it took about, 6, 7, 8 years to finally do the movie. And I did the movie independently of Sony. But once the movie was done, I went back to them and said, well, I've got this movie. And then they ended up giving me all the clips. And they ended up putting the documentary on a box set of William Castle movies that came out.
Right.
And that's long out of print. So we ended up doing our own DVD. That's another story. But that's how this whole kind of career in DVD extras got started, really was through monster movies and William Castle.
William Castle is one of these directors who not only was he this influential creator of films, but he was sort of a force of nature in and of himself. If you could tell us a little bit about him and how he got on this road to these actually quite groundbreaking gimmick films.
Yeah, because at first he started out doing every genre of film early on in his career until he kind of got into the horror thing.
He was a kid who grew up loving movies. He grew up in New York. He loved movies. He loved, some of his first experiences with horror actually was seeing the Bela Lugosi Dracula on stage.
He saw it live.
He saw it live, right? Exactly.
That must have been amazing.
And when he saw that play, that was an early example of these gimmicks. Even before the movies, he saw going to see the Lugosi Dracula. They had nurses in the lobby, and they had weird atmospheric effects in the theater and that kind of thing. And he was just so amazed by this, and he never forgot that. So he went to Hollywood. He was, in his early days, he was a script supervisor, and he worked on some big Hollywood movies as a script supervisor, or a dialogue director, they used to call it. And he ended up working with Orson Welles on The Lady from Shanghai, and he shot Second Unit on Lady from Shanghai. He actually found the property, the book. He bought the book, and Orson Welles ended up making that into a movie.
But didn't he want to direct it? He wanted to direct it.
Yeah. That's sort of a common theme with William Castle.
It's so
wanting to direct.
But think about it. You're going up against Orson Welles. I mean, he had this. He's a great director. He's Mr. Citizen Kane, and so it's almost like, oh well, okay, but he got
almost
to
expect it.
Yeah, he got to work with Welles.
Yeah, he got to work with Welles, and he got a ton of experience and learning on the job. And he ended up back in the day at Columbia Pictures. They would hire directors and they would put him under contract. And they didn't necessarily have a choice in what kind of movies they would even get to direct, right? So he made a few really interesting early movies. Like he did a movie with Robert Mitchum called Betrayed. It was an early film noir, really good, really atmospheric movie. And then so Harry Cohn, who ran Columbia at the time, hired him, to be a contract director. So contract director means you're contracted. You have to direct what we tell you to direct. So he ended up directing a lot of very unremarkable movies. A lot of Westerns that no one's ever heard of, historical epics. They were B movies. They were meant to play on the second half of the double bill. Your audience knows all about this, I'm sure.
Yes, they do.
But these weren't hard movies. These were straight, legit movies that no one's ever heard of or seen. There was one gimmicky one called Fort Ty, which was a 3D Western.
Right.
An arrow. There's arrows coming at you and cool things like that, flaming arrows. But he wanted to strike out on his own. And it wasn't necessarily, I have to make horror movies. He was like, how can I make a movie independently and maybe make some money and break away from this studio director kind of thing and maybe make something with my own personality? He saw a movie called Diabolique. Remember that movie?
Classic French horror film.
French
do not see the remake.
Yeah. Well, Sharon Stone's pretty good, but yes, don't see the remake. So Diabolique was a big black and white shocker from France.
And a big hit in America, right?
Huge hit. Lines around the block. And actually, that's what William Castle, before he even saw the movie, he saw the lines going around the block. He knew this has got to be something special. And then he saw it and he's like, whoa, this is great. Maybe I could do something like this. So he got the rights to a book. It was a book that was like a murder mystery. And it was about a child who was kidnapped and there's like a ticking clock. And we have to save the kid before the kid, disappears and dies. So he bought the rights to the book. He changed the title to Macabre, and he made the movie independently. But he financed it himself, or he helped get the financing himself. So he had a lot of writing.
Mortgaged his house.
He had a lot writing on this, and his wife supported him. His wife was always there, supporting what he wanted to do. But it was their house that they had on the line. So he had to find a way to make sure that the audiences showed up, and because he wanted those long lines from Diabolique, right? So he remembered, that Dracula thing with the nurses in the lobby. He came up with a scheme. What if we insured the audience against death by fright, so that if you're watching this movie and it's just too much for you and you just keel over from a heart attack, your beneficiaries will get $1 million, right? And I always thought that was BS, like it was a gimmick, because he had Lloyd's of London do this policy, and Lloyd's of London was a major, respected firm in England. But I actually, when I made the documentary, I actually found the contract. So he actually did this. Yes.
Did you really?
He actually did this. So
did he ever pay out?
Well, he probably would have liked to, because if someone actually did drop dead,
think of the publicity. Matt, can you imagine my film killed someone? Sure, he'd have to pay the $1,000, but then the publicity of like, oh my God, it's the scariest film ever. I want a chance of getting $1,000. I've got to go see it.
That would have been great. Yeah.
Well,
but also, Jeffrey, wasn't it because he was so good when he made those films that no one really remembers? He was good at doing them on time, on budget, within a schedule. And Harry Cohen, who everyone hated, he was like the most hated guy in Hollywood.
A terrifying
producer. But he liked William Castle because he brought these films.
He was reliable.
Right? Yes.
Absolutely. So when he did Macabre and he had the nurses in the lobby and you'd have to sign your certificate, that got people talking, and that movie made a lot of money. And then Harry Cohen saw that and said, maybe we should bring him back and maybe we should let him do his own movies. He ended up following that movie up with House on Haunted Hill, which he did for LA Artist.
1959.
Which I'm sure you all know. That was with Vincent Price, and they became really good friends. Vincent Price actually got a piece of the action of that movie because he
didn't have enough money. He didn't have enough money to pay for Vincent Price, but he made the deal. Say, okay, well, you get money on the back end, and that was a smart decision by Vincent Price.
And wasn't it too, like, even though Price had already been in, House of Wax and The Fly, so he was starting his horror career, but it seemed like with House on Haunted Hill and The Tingler, it really cemented his role as like a horror star. I mean, yes, you think way back he did Invisible Man Returns or whatever, but he would sporadically do these hit horror films. But it seemed like with House on Haunted Hill, is the iconic horror star in a way. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. He wasn't really known as a horror star, but after he did those early Castle movies, absolutely, he was off to the races. So the second gimmick movie was House on Haunted Hill. And House on Haunted Hill is a pretty good haunted house movie.
Love it.
But the gimmick for that was called EMERGO.
EMERGO.
He started giving the gimmicks names. Like Macabre didn't have the gimmick didn't have a name. It was just a life insurance policy.
Right.
But now it's like, I can even go one better. I'll give the gimmick a name, because there are all these things like Cinerama and all these like early 1950s gimmicks to get people off their butts and back into the theaters, watching I Love Lucy on their couch, right? Same as today, actually. So he came up with the idea of EMERGO, and what EMERGO was going to be at a certain part of the movie, a skeleton was going to fly over the heads of the audience and shock everybody beyond repair. They were going to be so scared.
It's supposed to interact with you too, isn't it?
I've seen pictures of this thing. Some of it was, sometimes it would be a real fake skeleton, but sometimes it was this really cheap blow up skeleton.
Yeah, inflatable.
Right. Inflatable. Yeah, really cheap versions. He probably had different versions for different markets. Maybe Duluth probably got the the blow-ups.
Right.
And
then, like the first showing of the movie, people were maybe a little shocked by it, but then they would come in for the second showing, and then that was like target practice for this skeleton.
I love the stories in your documentary about the people talking about who actually were there, like John Waters talking about it. And just,
I love it.
Well, the kids would go now, and it wasn't necessarily the most horrifying thing they'd ever seen. It was kind of ridiculous. So they would start throwing their popcorn in boxes and soda cans at it.
And for listeners who don't know, I mean, like today when a film comes out, they release it everywhere at the same time. Back then, this was not the case. These films would be in an area and play there for a week or two, then move to another area. So, Castle could actually be there and, help set up the skeleton or stuff. And so this thing about, there's a skeleton, there was word of mouth would travel from town to town
to get you in there.
And he loved making those appearances, apparently.
He loved it. He would start to show up because he wasn't a brand name the way he later became in those early films. Like he looked at Alfred Hitchcock and he saw what Hitchcock was doing, that he was a respected director who got to choose his own material, but he was also part of the selling of the movie. He was part of the personality. The package, personality. But I actually think that Hitchcock was inspired by William Castle.
Absolutely.
I
think so. Yeah.
Hitchcock was doing, cameos in the movies and the trailers. But when Hitchcock made Psycho, this is a little bit later, he was in his own trailers. But Castle had already been doing that. For a few years before. So I actually feel Hitchcock was inspired by Castle, even though Castle looked at Hitchcock as like his god, and he was a little bit jealous of Hitchcock.
Sure.
So he was always called the poor man's Hitchcock.
Well, it's funny though, but when it came to the rivalry between Hitchcock and Castle, I was introduced to Castle first because those movies were in rotation more often on TV for me to see. Right. And later I discovered Hitchcock. But William Castle was again my wonderful creepy uncle. Who was
it was like
take me on a ride.
It was like for us growing up watching TV with horror hosts, how the way on television horror hosts were our guides introducing us to all this great horror, crazy stuff. And that's what Castle was like. He kind of acted in a way like a horror host for us,
Yes, that's true.
And there was something kind of conspiratorial, it's just, come on into my world, kids. And it was definitely
come to the cool place.
Kids. Yes, definitely aimed toward kids. Like the parents would drop the kids off at the movies. Right. And then the kids would get to spend time with William Castle. And sometimes he would actually show up. Like his next movie, he did a whole tour.
The personal
and I know the next movie you're going to want to talk about.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, it changed my life, really.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite horror films, of all time.
But before we get to that, just to say, I'm sure people have seen the preview or the trailer for The House on Haunted Hill, and you see this really cool house that's like cement blocks, kind of Mayan look. And that house, folks, it's still there. It's called Ennis House. It was built by Frank Lloyd Wright. And
is it still on Haunted Hill?
It is. And this was actually the street that Forey Ackerman just lived down the street on Glendale.
Alicia Cook is still in there.
No.
Due to the economy now, the amount of money you get for staying there is less and less.
But it's weird. Like over the years, because of how it was built in the 1920s, so some of it started to kind of fall apart in a road. But it has been repaired. It's taken years and years and years. But guys, you could still drive up there, and you could kind of look at the house like from the beginning of the trailer when you see the house and you see Vincent Price saying, "Welcome, this is welcome to a party." You see the house and the house is still there and it's so cool.
And I want to rent a plane and fly a skeleton over it.
It's also a credit to Castle that it is not your typical spooky old haunted house, but yet he managed to make everything really creepy and scary in that movie.
The problem is the inside of the house doesn't look anything like the outside.
Right. Nothing. But I will say, Jeffrey, I don't know about you, but people joke, it's like made, in the 50s. That's one of the scariest moments still creeps me out in that film. It's when the girl's down there and she turns and there's this woman, this witch that's like
the housekeeper or something it's supposed to be,
which is so illogical.
But it's I know, but that's why it's scary because it's so illogical the way she's standing there with that ghastly grin.
Yes,
and that's the thing about Castle too is that he could actually create genuinely scary, shocking moments. Like there are moments in the Tingler, moments like scary stuff. Like he could get the shock. He was good at.
Don't let logic get in the way.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Just go with visceral. It. Yeah.
especially with the Tingler, the next movie.
Yeah.
The Tingler is like, to me, like the North by Northwest of
it's like one of
Castle
the
films. It's so amazing.
It's a movie made by Mad Men.
And there is a scene in that movie that scared me more. Like up until that point of watching horror movies, there's one scene where there's an attempt to scare someone to death.
Right.
The series of images and things that happen in that scene scared the shit out of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That also was inspired by Diabolique, that scene, because the scene you're talking about is a bathtub scene.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
And the bathtub, it's filled with blood. And the blood is red.
Yeah, color.
But the movie's in black and white.
Yeah.
So I still don't really know how they did it.
Yeah, that was really well done.
Please run us through the plot of the Tingler.
You're asking me to describe the plot of this insane movie.
If you could.
Well, the
As best you can.
The Tingler was his third quote unquote gimmick movie. He probably had the gimmick before he had the plot. And he started working with a writer. He would work with the same writer on the first few movies, right? A guy named Rob White. And Rob White wrote Macabre, he wrote House on Haunted Hill, he wrote The Tingler and a few other ones.
Yep.
And they had a really good relationship, and they would come up with these crazy ideas. And the idea that I suspect came up before the movie itself was written was the gimmick was called PERCEPTO.
PERCEPTO! I love that.
PERCEPTO. So we had EMERGO, now we have PERCEPTO. And what it was, he wanted to find a way, I guess, working backwards from the gimmick, and the gimmick was little electric seat buzzers that he installed under not all the seats, but many of the seats. And at a certain point in the movie, the buzzer would go off and you're supposedly being electrocuted, right? So that's the gimmick. But how do you find a plot to match that gimmick, right? So I'll try to describe the plot for you. So the Tingler is about the monster known as the Tingler. And apparently we all have a Tingler.
We all have one.
Yeah.
I still have mine.
The Tingler lives on your spine.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sort of shaped like a spine, too. He looks like a lobster, but he's shaped like and I don't know, maybe he's small. But what happens is when you get scared, your body really produces fear. And the Tingler monster that everyone has that lives on your back feeds on the fear, right? So you're scared, and the Tingler can grow and kill you. He could snap your back somehow and kill you if you're too scared. The only way to release the fear and diminish the power of the Tingler is to scream for your life, right? So that's the monster. So in this movie, Vincent Price is a scientist, and he is studying this. He discovers the Tingler. He opens somebody up and he finds this thing. Nobody in the history of the world has ever found it.
He's lucky that way.
Great.
He's lucky that way.
He finds a Tingler and he removes it and he puts it in a little cage. And at one point in the movie, the Tingler gets out of the cage.
Yeah.
And it gets out into a movie theater. And the people it's actually a silent movie theater, which is on Fairfax. It used to be on Fairfax.
That's
right.
Right.
Yeah. Which is a whole other story, which we could talk about. I just
we could.
Oh, yes.
Just drove by there. So the Tingler gets out and it's sneaking around on the floor. And Vincent Price realizes that this is happening. And he screams at you, the audience that's watching the Tingler, but also the audience that's watching the movie in the movie. It's very meta before meta.
Yeah.
And he says, "Scream for your lives. The Tingler is loose in the theater." And then the movie stops. And then everyone in the audience is supposed to start screaming. And they did, because the buzzers are going off at the same time. So he created, William Castle, pandemonium. And then a few minutes later, after everything calms down, Vincent Price comes back and he says, "Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the Tingler is vanquished. We will now return to the movie." And I can't do Vincent Price. One of you guys can do the impression.
It's amazing.
Scream for your lives.
I have to quickly interject. When I got married to my wife, we had a ceremony. And as part of the ceremony, first of all, we had the wedding at the silent movie theater.
Yep.
We had a whole thing where my Tingler was my fear of commitment. And it gets loose in the theater. And then so we had to track it down before I could get married. And my buddy, comedian Dana Gould, was doing his best Vincent Price, telling everyone to scream once my fear of commitment was loose.
It was great,
it brought
Jeffrey.
down
It
the
was
house.
awesome. Yeah,
So much
And
fun.
my Percepto was I gave a number of people joy buzzers in their hands. And so at one point they just went zzz to the person next to them.
You did a cheapo version.
The cheapo version.
Yeah.
Even cheaper than the real one.
Yeah,
Matt,
cheap
you
Septo.
Matt, you showed clips of the.
Clips. Yeah, I showed
Right.
clips of the Tingler
It
to
was
bring it all
awesome.
together.
It was
You know,
You
awesome.
have a very
explanation.
patient and loving wife, I'm sure.
Oh, she's the
Yes,
best.
he does.
She really is.
She
Yes,
is.
indeed.
Yes.
But it's great
I'm-
because to me, it's like that's actual interaction that Castle created with the audience in his movie. You know, like that's made it like this party event kind of atmosphere, which is kind of really unique, you know?
Yes, you weren't just getting the movie, you were getting an experience. And now we have, I mean, he was definitely a pioneer in this interactive experience. Now they have all kinds of stuff going on in theaters where it's basically just shaking the seats, right?
Yeah, right.
And, so they're doing that now. I mean, at Universal City Walk, you can still
Yes.
see. I don't know what they call it now. Do you know what it's called? The latest version of the
Yeah, I don't know.
seat shaking?
Yeah.
It's like
Sensor
5D,
round.
isn't it like 5K
Well,
or so 5D?
hey,
or
sensor
something?
round.
5D.
Well, yeah, since around later.
Right.
in the
But you know,
70s, yeah.
it's funny, Jeffrey, when word got out, weren't kids were like, I want to sit in the, and it's not, you weren't electrocuted. It was more like, it was like a buzzer. It would
Yeah, like
go
a vibrating.
Yeah,
Yeah, but you
and-
thought you were going to be
yes,
electrocuted.
yes. But so kids would actually go around and look for this thing in the theater.
Well, it was a little
Alerts.
box. It was a little box that screwed onto the bottom of the seat. And I have the manual. There's a manual that all the theaters were sent. And these poor theater owners, they had to figure out a
yeah,
way
really.
Wow,
to
yeah.
install this. And so he had Tingler installers that would go in and help to install these things. But no, he didn't do it under every seat. That would be too much.
Right.
It was very few seats, actually. So
Right.
you never knew if you were going to get the buzzer seat. So like you said, some of the kids would go in before the movie and look underneath and they figured it out. There's probably a few of them tried to take it home with them. I'm serious. It's like a little army surplus motor, like a little
Right.
motor.
See,
But what a
that's
great way
something
to
you
get-
would do.
Yeah. What a great way to get people to come back.
Yeah, totally.
I want to get the seat this time, you know?
Yeah.
Yes,
And
exactly.
and by the way,
Exactly.
Percepto should be used in every movie. You know what I mean? Like on Golden Pond would have been a much better experience.
But
Perceptive.
also what's so great is, again, it's like you're watching a film, but then the film breaks and you see the Tingler go across the screen.
Yeah,
And it's
really
like, oh
clever.
hell! I mean, that is so awesome.
Yeah, it's
What other
creepy.
film does that kind of thing?
That's
and-
probably my favorite moment in cinema.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
And Jeffrey, doesn't it bother you that I want a rubbery Tingler that I can have at home that I can play with and squish and
Yeah, they
put
made
on
like
my
a nice
back.
kind of like vinyl one it's not
Sean
rubbery.
and I have it.
Yeah, it's
But
pretty
that's-
cool.
But it's
a rubbery
hard,
one would be
though.
cool though.
I think a rubber one would be better.
Yeah. And they
They
put a
could-
face on it too, which I don't remember there ever being it's like a little tiny
Little
mouth.
eyes
on one end.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
don't remember
You
that
can't-
being part of
Can't
it.
really tell in the movie, right?
In
Yeah.
the movie, it doesn't really move very well, and you can
Yeah,
see
it's on
the
strings.
strings pulling it along.
Yeah, I know.
And there's
As
this
John
one,
Waters was saying, it makes it better. It's like
Yeah,
you're in on the
Yeah.
joke. It's
It
fine.
does.
Right.
it does.
yeah, the Tingler is totally ridiculous and hilarious to watch, but he's got personality. There's this one scene,
Yeah,
Vincent Price is
yeah,
sleeping
and-
on
and
the
everybody-
couch.
Yeah.
You see him creeping up on him, and he attacks him, and Vincent Price screams. And then
Yeah.
that's when he realizes that the Tingler can be vanquished by the scream because he screams,
Right.
and the
Right.
Tingler just falls dead. I don't know. He doesn't
Hey, and
passes out.
wasn't the LSD sequence like the first acid trip in a movie?
Well, Vincent
Pretty
Price,
much, right?
He's doing experiments to figure out how this Tingler thing works. So he needs to try to scare himself. So he thought, I'll just drop acid. And I don't even think people knew what acid was then. You see him reading a book about lysergic, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And he starts tripping, and he's trying to hold his fear in.
Mustn't scream.
And he mustn't scream, but then he just can't take it anymore. And he has the first acid freak out in movies. And that was in the Tingler.
Now, Matt, is
And
that what
I
you
love
did?
that scream, too.
Matt, did you read a book or something? Hey, how do I get into this? How do I?
That's what I did. No,
That's
I
what
watched
you
the
did. Go
Tingler and I
do-
went,
yeah.
I need to do this.
You got to wonder Vincent Price's character, like how many other unrelated experiments after that somehow involved LSD. Like, well, maybe I should try the LSD when doing a surgery.
Now I'm trying mescaline.
Now, but
you just
look,
keep
Jeff-
going through all the drugs.
But Jeffrey, as ridiculous as it sounds, you got to give Vincent Price and everybody credit.
They all played super straight.
I mean,
Yes.
I mean, Matt, you do the great Vincent Price scream when he comes out of the LSD thing. I know you do that really well.
Well, it's always it's a weird scream. It's like you know.
yeah.
But he gives it his all. He takes it
Yes, he
seriously
does.
through the
It's so
whole
great.
thing.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that convinced me of the whole thing. Like, this is really intense. This is scary. You know, I never thought, oh, this is stupid.
Yeah, from a kid's point of view, it's like, whoa,
Oh.
this is serious shit. You know?
Totally.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a movie that people are still doing that gimmick. And that's how I
Yeah.
first saw the when William Castle was sort of forgotten for a long time. And then our friend John Waters started writing about him, and he
Mhm.
wrote a chapter on him in his book, and he was always sort of singing the praises of these great directors. I first heard about a lot of people like Herschel Gordon Lewis and Russ Meyer, and from reading John Waters' books.
Yeah.
And so the first time I ever saw The Tingler was when I was in college. The Film Forum in New York City, they were the first theater to actually revive The Tingler.
That's awesome.
And I'd never seen the movie before. I kind of knew what to expect, but I didn't expect a whole bunch of 90s era hipsters screaming their heads off and
Right.
complete and total pandemonium. Like, oh my God, this movie is decades old. These are, they've seen everything hipsters, and everyone's going crazy. That's the moment where I think I knew I wanted to make a movie about this guy one day, because, his gimmicks and his movies still have the power to just amaze us and delight us. And they were really cheap gimmicks. So they're inspiring too. Like, look how much you can do with like a paperclip and some dental floss,
Right.
They were also unique to each film, because there were many 3D films and many VistaVision films, but there was only one Percepto, right?
So far.
There's only one EMERGO.
Yeah.
Right.
So far,
and,
yes.
And that was the point, because these would be events. They would be like unique events. And then for the next film, you had to find something new.
And what was the next film?
What was the next one?
Yeah.
It was actually 13 Ghosts.
Oh, that's
The
right.
next-
Filmed in Illusiono.
Right.
That was another gimmick, Illusiono, and only done for this one movie. So that was not 3D, but it used glasses. The glasses that you were provided was one side was blue and one side was
It's
red.
like the
That was
top.
red.
The top was red, and below it was blue, and you could hold the viewer, like you could just lift it up or over your eye or down
So
over
to
your
If
see
eye.
you got
the
too
ghosts.
scared,
Yeah.
you
Right.
could
To
remove
see the
the
ghost,
ghost.
we use the red. If you're too scared to see the ghost, you look through the blue, which is
So the
pretty
ghost-
damn clever.
The ghost would appear, and I don't know how many times this happened in the movie, but just a handful of times. So you'd have to wait for these moments where the ghost would
Right.
appear. It was a photographic effect of some kind. So
Yes.
you'd hold up the glasses, and if you wanted to see them, you held up one color. But if
To
you
the
were too
red.
scared, you have
To
to
the
make
blue.
the effort to go through and look. So that you would
Right.
you have to make the effort to not see them, right?
Now,
So,
Right.
the weird thing is you can see the ghosts there, on the regular film, but it's like the little glasses just make them more prominent if you use the red, or
right,
make them
right.
go away. And but why would you want to go to this film and make the
Of
ghosts
course.
go away?
Right.
Because you can. They're there, they're gone. They're there,
Yeah.
they're gone.
Yeah.
Now, Jeffrey, do you have one of those? Do you have one
yes,
of those?
I do have them.
Oh,
That's awesome.
I was able to get a bunch of original casts. I actually donated a lot of my stuff from this film to the Academy. So they,
Oh, nice.
Oh,
and
wow.
which is
Right.
so cool, because they wanted all my materials and research
Nice.
materials and all my interviews and all the ads and everything that I was able to find all got donated to the Academy, and they wanted this stuff. So isn't it cool that,
Yeah.
these movies, and William Castle was so disreputable for so
Yeah,
long.
kind of like
Nobody-
dismissed at the time.
Nobody
Right.
would consider this like important cinema history, but it is, right?
Yeah.
And the Academy now recognizes that and has all this stuff. So we'll see if they show the Tingler in their new gigantic dome movie theater. I'm hoping that they will one of these
Yeah,
days.
That would be
Really?
so wonderful.
They just showed The Exorcist there on Halloween,
Nice.
the new theater they opened up.
Oh,
Yes,
that's
but to
awesome.
show the Tingler, and the Academy probably has the money, so everybody can get a buzz
Yeah.
under their seat.
Well, listen,
Yeah.
write your congressman, and maybe we can make that.
Yeah. Right. And
They
I
never
like,
listened to me.
in 13 Ghosts, I love the concept of that too, about the guy kind of trapping the ghosts in the house. That's really cool.
Ghostbusters.
Yes.
It's really fun.
Right.
It's,
That was also written by Rob White, his collaborator. And they went on to make another movie or two, but then things as often happens with creative relationships, I think Rob White started seeing how much money William Castle was making and saying, I need a little bit more of that. And then they went separate ways at a certain point. But Rob White was a very interesting character, and kind of an adventurer. And he wrote adventure books for kids, and he made boats and sailboats by hand. And he had nothing to do with the horror world at all. I actually tracked down a This Is Your Life episode of Rob White.
Really?
And and William Castle actually, and I think somehow William Castle, who was the host of that show?
I know you're.
Yes.
So they did Rob White, and like nobody knows who Rob White is, but it was right before the release of House on Haunted Hill, and William Castle made an appearance and got to talk about EMERGO. So I have a feeling William Castle arranged this, just so he could go on the show and talk about it. But yeah, Rob White's kids were on this, and it's a very obscure. No one's ever seen this thing. It's not in syndication, that's for sure.
The host was Ralph Edwards.
That's right, Ralph Edwards.
Yeah, and I think it would have been wonderful if during that episode that Castle would have come in on a line, like EMERGO.
Now, you were mentioning the silent movie theater. You had some information or story about the.
Well, do you know what happened at the silent movie theater?
Yeah, the murder.
The murder. Yes, this was like.
Wait, what?
Yes.
Okay. Now we're talking about fun things that happen in a movie theater that you want to experience. This is something you would never want to experience. The silent movie theater was there for years and years and years. It actually inspired the silent movie theater in the Tingler, because this older couple had owned it for a long time. And then a guy took it over who was this wonderful old queen that used to show these movies, silent movies. And I went there all the time in the 90s when I first moved here. His name was Larry Austin. And he had this big pompadour and very regal and wonderful guy, knew everything about silent movies. And he would walk down the aisle to pomp and circumstance that somebody would be playing on the organ. And he would talk to you about these movies. And then one night, and I wasn't there for this, thank God. One night they were showing Sunrise, the F.W. Murnau movie.
Yeah, Murnau.
And before the movie started, or maybe during the movie, I think, somebody came in with a gun and held up the theater, shot one of the Candy Girl, and shot Larry Austin, murdered him right there in the theater. This really happened. And nobody knew what was going on. And I remember I went there, and the days after, there were tributes to him. And it was like, what is going on here? It turns out the projectionist was his lover. And the projectionist hired somebody to go in and shoot Larry Austin to make it look like a robbery.
No.
And then he would inherit the estate. This all came out in the weeks and months after this really happened.
Wow.
And that I've always wanted to make a movie about this. Maybe one day.
It sounds like the plot of a William Castle film.
Doesn't it?
It does. Yes.
Right.
Yes, it does.
It's one of those Hollywood Babylon kind of stories that you read about it. You just can't believe. And Larry Austin was a real character. And there's some questions about Larry Austin, like how did he end up with the theater?
Right.
Did he, because the couple that owned it, the guy had passed away, and the wife was getting older and maybe didn't have all her faculties. And there's some talk about, well, did Larry Austin
he took advantage of it or
take
something?
Advantage, so maybe he wasn't,
but Jeffrey, it wasn't just the theater, wasn't it? It was all these silent films too.
Only silent movies they would show. Mm-hmm. It was the silent movie theater. They only showed silent movies, and it's been remodeled now. It's totally different.
Right.
But when you would walk in, on the walls in the theater, on the sides, there were these big portraits of Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford. It was a really cool special place.
Yeah.
And it was taken over. Multiple people took it over. There was a group called the Cine Family.
Cine Family, right? Yeah.
For years, and that went
Yet
away.
another scandal.
Another scandal happened, and that went away.
Some sketchy got people in that situation too.
I went there a lot. They showed great movies, and it was lots of fun. But then something behind the scenes happened.
Then it went wrong. Yeah,
it went wrong, and now some new people have bought that theater and remodeled it, and it's like I don't know because I haven't been there, but it's sort of like a clothing line, and part of the clothing line is to go to the theater.
I have to check it out now.
Lifestyle thing, but people are going now to see these older movies. I don't know. It's cool that LA has a really interesting revival.
I wish there was more of it. Really.
Yeah. I live in Los Feliz near Silver Lake, and we're right by the Vista Theater. I don't know.
I love the Vista.
Beautiful theater.
Yeah, they have nice retro screenings there and stuff.
They do. They showed first run movies, but our friend Quentin Tarantino just bought that theater. And he's going to be doing his programming there, and I'm really excited about it. It's a 10-minute walk from my house.
That's awesome.
And then I saw the Tingler at the Alex.
Right, me too.
Yes,
when they revived it. Yeah,
you were at that screening because we filmed that for Spine Tingler.
Yeah, that's the extras of the DVD.
There.
Yeah.
No way.
Me too. Yeah.
They show
I was
House on
there.
Haunted Hill.
I was there and I brought a date. And that was the last I saw of that woman.
She didn't pass the litmus test there.
That's not the woman.
That's a good thing, Matt. That was a good thing. Then
you're right, Larry. Absolutely.
If a girl doesn't like EMERGO, you got to pass.
Come on. Percepto. Excuse me.
Percepto.
No, then she failed the punishment poll.
Exactly.
Thumbs down.
That's a very good segue.
Yes,
please.
Right.
The punishment poll, that was another gimmick.
Yeah,
that was another gimmick for a movie called Mr. Sardonicus. That
1961.
1961. We're skipping a big one. I guess.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
We are.
But, as long as we're on Mr. Sardonicus, that was a different kind of movie. That was more like a Hammer. Kind
it
of
was. It really did feel like a Hammer film.
It looked different.
Yeah,
it was different. It was because all his other movies were modern, and this one was a period film, and it had a villain named Mr. Sardonicus, who was sort of like. What's that movie? The Man Who Laughs, the silent movie.
Conrad Veidt.
Conrad Veidt. He had the crazy big smile, and that villain in Mr. Sardonicus is sort of inspired by him.
Yes.
But the big gimmick was at the end of the movie. Supposedly, the audience could get to decide the fate of the villain, and the way you would decide is when you were handed a little card with a thumb on it. A glow-in-the-dark thumb, and at the end, William Castle comes on the screen before the big climax and talks to you and asks you, "Would you like the villain to be, to get away with it, or to
mercy
be
or no mercy?" Yeah,
mercy. That's right.
But then he asks, "Well, what about you, ma'am, in the yellow coat?" Or he doesn't. You eating your popcorn. And I remember
he's counting. He's counting the people in the audience.
He's
from the screen.
And then I always thought, if I'm in there, with like two people, I go, "What the hell is he talking about?" I mean, it's just me and this other person in there.
I love that idea. It's great. It's like transcending.
Maybe one gullible person in the theater actually thought he was there.
Yeah, that's great.
But so supposedly, like, who's going to vote for the villain to live, right? Right. So he's supposedly counting your thumb down, right?
Right. Yes.
And then you go ahead and the villain gets punished. But so supposedly there was this alternate second ending where he got away with it, but they never filmed that.
There was, right? Like most likely they never filmed that, right?
Jeffrey, Jeffrey, in your research, did you? Because I don't think there was ever one.
No, there was never.
It would cost money.
Exactly,
which goes against. Go ahead.
It's one thing he would never allow is something to cost more. So you'd have to have the projectionist go in and change the reels, and that was
right.
That was Mr. Sardonicus, but the actually it might be maybe a close second to my favorite gimmick, except for Percepto, is the gimmick for Homicidal.
Homicidal, a groundbreaking movie in a lot of ways to me. It's like, yes, of course, yes, it exists mainly probably because of Psycho, but he does something. He kind of goes further with it in some ways with the whole transgender stuff, and it's weird. It's creepy and it's violent.
Creepy on its own legs, on its own ground. It's not Psycho. It's very different.
Right. It's in the same ballpark area
whereas Psycho is this build, Homicidal just gets right to it.
Yeah.
I remember watching that as a kid and then watching that wedding scene. I'm like, what the hell is this? Where are we going from here?
Right.
For listeners, understand, Psycho came out in 1960. It was huge success. And of course, I think, William Castle's seen this. He goes, look, Hitchcock, he's using my things, because even Hitchcock had a gimmick. Never before had it been said they are not letting anyone into the theater. Once the film starts, no one is being allowed. And that was a gimmick. That was a gimmick that was being used. And Castle thought, he's taken a page from my book, basically.
Right.
So then when the follow-up with Homicidal goes, well, I'll show you. I'm going to have my own little maniac or homicidal person. And
what was the gimmick?
Well, so Homicidal was essentially a Psycho ripoff because it came out after Psycho. But Psycho, I thought, was kind of a ripoff of William Castle too, because Hitchcock was making these big VistaVision, color, Cary Grant, big movies.
Yeah,
right. But Psycho was a little gritty, sleazy, black and white horror movie that showed a toilet for the first time in cinema history, right?
Oh, really?
I know.
The first
Shocking.
one, really?
Shocking. and kills off the leading lady. Shocker, in the first few minutes. Sorry, spoiler alert. But you're supposed to say that before, I know. But Psycho had the icy blonde, heroine. Homicidal had the icy blonde, but then she becomes the psycho, right? In the first scene, like you were talking about, right? Yeah. So Homicidal also had sort of a if you're too scared to see the ending situation. So the heroine is walking toward this house, and there's a clock that appears on screen, a little timer, and William Castle comes back on and talks to the audience and says, "If you're too scared to see the rest of the movie, we will refund your money." Oh, great. I get my money back. But no, you have to humiliate yourself by walking up the aisle.
Follow the yellow
footsteps. Yellow for a coward. Walk up the aisle.
Genius.
And go and stand in the coward's corner. And the coward's corner was you have to be penned off. And then all the people get to see you when they leave the movie, because it's only like 5 minutes before the end of the movie.
Sure.
And you have to stand there, and while all the people walk out, they get to look at you in the coward's corner and point at you and laugh at you because you're such a chicken. Right. And they would actually play chicken sound effects in the lobby too.
That's hilarious.
So that was the coward's corner, and I don't think anybody got their money back.
Right.
It was a gauntlet that you had to walk through to get your money.
Right.
But I love Homicidal. That's a fun movie.
Yeah. In your documentary, you were pointing out that the first tries at that were just you could get your money back, and then people would see the movie and then come back.
They'd stay.
Next showing.
And
then take off and get their money back.
Yeah.
And so they had to readjust the gimmick to,
had to be punished
make it
somehow.
more humiliating.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So people would be willing to sit through it twice just to get their 40 cents back. So there's this great. We found some great footage of William Castle in Youngstown, Ohio, at the premiere of Homicidal, and he's interviewing people as they're coming out.
Oh, he's interviewing that one woman.
Yeah.
Yes, I like. Yeah, and don't tell what happens at the end, or I'll kill you. And if they don't, I will.
Exactly. Yeah, somebody almost gives away the ending, and he stops her. And so that's a really fun clip to watch. There's clips of it in Spine Tingler, but you can probably find the whole thing somewhere. It's a little 5 or 10 minute short that Columbia made for Homicidal.
Jeffrey, just out of curiosity, you found that stuff. I'm wondering, well, like in reality television or whatever, you do many takes of stuff. So I'm sure, didn't he talk to like a bunch of people? Did you find other clips of him talking to other people?
Like from his personal appearances and stuff? Yeah.
I never found outtakes from that, but Bob Burns, who I'm sure you all know.
Yes.
Bob Burns hosted the Texas premiere of The Tingler.
Right.
And he actually did his own little gimmick where he dressed up his wife as Miss Shock. And he dressed up himself as a monster, and he had a few different monsters, and they met William Castle at the airport as these monsters, and they drove in the limo together, right, to the premiere. And Bob Burns had some home movie footage of this that had never been seen before.
That's
and
awesome.
He let me transfer it, and we used it.
Doesn't he give him it's like the key to the city, and it's like a skeleton hand or something?
The skeleton key to this was a time where the mayors would give you the key to the city for the visiting dignitary, right? So in San Antonio, Texas, the visiting dignitary was William Castle. So they gave Bob Burns had to give him a skeleton key to the city, and it's a skeleton. It's like a bone with that looks like a key. And Terry Castle, his daughter, that was one of the first things I asked her: is, do you still have this key to the city skeleton? Yeah. That one didn't survive. I don't know why.
Too bad.
But we have it on film, and it's
seeing that was so great because I recognized in that clip. I recognize Kathy Burns because I guess there's a photo of her in that makeup with William Castle in one of the Famous Monster magazine issues.
Right.
And I go, oh my gosh, there's film footage of this? I had no idea. That was so great that you had that in the film.
That's another piece of the puzzle here is Famous Monsters magazine.
Sure.
When these movies were being covered, Forey Ackerman, I bet you William Castle saw what Forey Ackerman was doing, the editor of Famous Monsters, and talking directly to the kids. And he was sort of your crazy uncle who's
like the Uncle
inspiring with you.
Right.
And William Castle sort of played a similar role. And so William Castle's movies appeared on those magazines, and Forey Ackerman and him.
On the cover, Mr. Sardonicus is a beautiful painting on the cover of one of the
Basil Gogos.
Yes.
That's right. Yes.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, I love that. And now when we get to the next film that he did, in my opinion, we're starting to go down a not so successful, in my opinion, road where he starts to add humor that's not really all that funny.
and shot in color, lacks some of the atmosphere maybe of his 50s
I'm referring to
stuff.
Zotz.
Oof.
Yeah.
Zotz,
1962.
Yes. Zotz was a comedy with Tom Poston, right?
That's correct.
Right.
Yes.
And it was more like a Disney kind of movie, like an absent-minded professor kind of movie. But that had a gimmick too. That was a little coin.
The coin.
You got to take something home with you. That was one of the other
always good
gimmicks.
Yeah.
That you got to take something home. But it was a little plastic Zotz coin. Not such a successful movie. Not a great movie. Not one of my favorites.
Right.
But I appreciate that he was trying to go in some of the directions. He did a couple comedies. He did an Old Dark House remake with Hammer.
Oh, yes, he did.
Yes, I know it well.
We are all familiar with that. We actually, when Mill Creek released a 20-film set of Hammer films, they had the Old Dark House remake, and we actually did the commentary for that.
Oh, you did?
That's
we
right.
did.
Hold up. I haven't seen that in years.
Our commentary is great.
The
film.
It's not a perfect film, but it kind of holds up better than I thought for its time.
Watch it for Fenella Fielding.
Yes.
Right. And actually, and just historically, it's unique because it's the only pairing of William Castle and Hammer Studios, which is very unique, But I think that period, the early 60s, it was kind of hit or miss. But then to me, he kind of came back a little bit to his old kind of style with Straight Jacket in 64. And that to me, like you guys say in the documentary, it's like he now had his ultimate gimmick, Joan Crawford.
Yes, I love Straight Jacket. Straight Jacket was made after whatever happened to Baby Jane, and that was Joan Crawford and Betty Davis's big horror comeback. They suddenly got rediscovered, and it's a pejoratively known as the hag movie, right?
Hagsploitation.
Yeah, not a phrase I'm fond of, but that is what people have referred to these movies as, these sort of formerly glamorous leading ladies who are now a little bit, getting up there in years. And part of the horror of it all is, oh my God, how dare they get old, right? And so Davis and Joan Crawford starred in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. It was a gigantic, massive hit.
Yeah. Right.
And then other movies started being made that starred older actresses in horror movies. And of course, William Castle could not have ignored the fact that Baby Jane was such a big hit.
Right.
And he decided he wanted to get in on that action. And he teamed up with Joan Crawford to do a movie called Straight Jacket, which was written by Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho. So you had the author of Psycho, the star of Baby Jane, and the director of any number of the Tingler, and you made Straight Jacket, which is actually a great movie. I love that movie.
I love it.
But he really, when Joan wanted something, he jumped.
Well, that's what's fascinating to me is that shows you what a good producer he was, though, that he could, first of all, wrangle Crawford, but also kind of control her to a point, or knew how to play her. Because I'm sure, the stories in your documentary, of what that control that she was putting over this film and with other actors, but they made the movie and they got it done, and Castle handled her pretty well.
Well, it was a kind of an ordeal because she was the biggest star he had ever worked with, and she did come with her own demands. She got to pick her co-star. Yes. She got to, she got the perks of a movie star, and she was a major star.
She got booze
in her trailer. She was a Pepsi sponsor.
She was married to the CEO of Pepsi, so of course she got Pepsi Cola was carted in every day.
Featured. It's prominently featured in there throughout the film. Yeah.
And then one thing I thought was very interesting was the temperature of the set.
Yeah.
And that it was very cold.
Always had to be cold.
Yes, that was so that her makeup would stay.
It was specifically for Joan Crawford.
Yes.
So keep her skin tight.
And she had to have
Can you believe that?
Yeah. She had to have her own trailer and her own maid. And
not just that, but they started filming the movie with an actress that played her daughter.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, Joan Crawford took a dislike to this actress and had her fired.
Yeah.
And she was replaced by Diane Baker.
Diane Baker
was wonderful.
She was great.
But she made the mistake of calling her Joan.
That's right. You don't do that. Miss Crawford is what you call her.
Wow.
And that, but also that story about Diane Baker's kind of final, very big dramatic scene in the movie was so good. And Joan saw that and said, "Wait a minute, we can't end the movie on a big scene with Diane it's got to be so that she convinced Castle to film another big, crazy histrionic scene with her to end with Joan in the movie, which
it wasn't in the script,
right?
Yeah,
no, you had to end with Joan, and that movie I found very touching because Joan gives an actually great performance.
Yes,
she plays a woman who's been in a mental asylum for decades for supposedly killing her lover with an axe, right? She's like a Lizzie Borden type. Right. And she's released from prison, and you get to see her trying to readjust to the world. And what we don't know, and I don't want to give anything away because maybe people haven't seen this one, is that all is not what it seems, right? And she thinks she's going crazy again. Right. Is she going crazy? And maybe not. And people are starting to get murdered with an axe. And is she the murderer or isn't she? Right. And she gives a great performance. And I highly, highly, highly recommend that. One of the cool things we found that Sony found when we were doing the DVD for that were the screen tests, which had never been shown before or seen before.
Oh, that's right.
And so you get to see Joan Crawford's screen tests when they were just figuring out what the lighting and the makeup was going to look like. And that's on the DVD, and there's some clips from that in the documentary too. They also did a little short film called How to Make a Movie Murder.
I love that. It's like, hi, Joan. Hi, William. What are you doing today? Let's murder some people. Is he carrying an axe?
It's great. It's William Castle, Joan Crawford, and Robert Bloch talking about making this movie. That's awesome. You mentioned that this didn't really have a gimmick because Joan was the gimmick. But I think at the last minute, he chickened out because he did actually have a gimmick. And he made these little paper axes that he gave away. And was it this movie or was it another one that had a seatbelt?
That was the next one. But didn't Joan actually went on tour with William Castle?
My gosh.
To help promote this. And what's really cool is in 2017 in the TV series Feud, Bette and Joan with Jessica Lange and Susan Sarandon, John Waters actually plays William Castle, and they kind of reenact a thing where she comes into the theater wielding an axe, and he encounters her on stage, and then he goes behind a little screen, and you see a silhouette of her hacking his head off, and the audience went nuts. Now, I don't know if that actually happened.
That didn't happen, although I wish it had, and I love it.
But she did go to some screenings.
She absolutely did, and they would stop the movie in the middle of the movie so she could march down the aisle and greet her public, right? But they did. They had a bus tour, and that was another thing. When you get to do the DVD extras, you get to go into the vaults, and Sony had all the original photographs. So, and I'd never seen it. No one had ever seen any of this stuff. And there's a ton of photos of Joan doing these tours and showing up and greeting her public with William Castle, going on the tour.
That's amazing.
I mean, this was great stuff. And it really did make you feel, like you said before, these movies would not open all at once. It would open city by city by city. So it was almost like a rock tour, She would get on the bus and just go to all these towns. And then Joan Crawford was coming to your town and William Castle was coming to your town. It was just amazing.
And Straight Jacket was successful. It was a
big hit. It was a big hit. Yes.
So was The Nightwalker, was that an attempt to replicate that success? Because you've got Barbara Stanwyck now.
Barbara Stanwyck, that's right. She and Robert Taylor. That was a gimmick for that movie because Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor had been married years before.
They're like the big Hollywood couple, right?
Big Hollywood. It's like Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman of the day.
But by the time Nightwalker, they were divorced. But the idea of having them together in a movie, that was
great gimmick, right?
Totally.
My God.
That's a good movie too. That's even getting later.
That's an underrated Castle.
It's an underrated movie, exactly.
Yeah. That's a different studio. He moved to Universal at some point and started doing movies there.
It's very creepy. And again, you've got Robert Bloch and that wonderful music by Vic Mizzy.
Wall-to-wall music.
Yeah. Makeup on Hayden Rourke is great.
Right.
Now, was Nightwalker kind of a hit or did it do okay?
I don't know how well it did. That one isn't really talked about that much.
I know,
That deserves another
reassessment.
Look.
Yeah. I know that and again, we are hitting a period like Let's Kill Uncle, The Busybody, The Spirit is Willing, comedy horrors that weren't actually, I've never seen The Busybody or Spirit is Willing, but
I'm giving Mr. Sardonicus thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
but let's not gloss over I Saw What You Did, because I believe, I think that is a pretty great
film.
movie.
Was that Universal, I think? Right? That was for Universal.
And that was Joan Crawford came back again. That was mostly a teenage movie, but he did have a couple of the older stars for the parents who wanted to go see that movie for whatever reason. He did something for them. So he had Joan Crawford, who's it? John Ireland. He had a couple of the older actors.
Yes, yeah.
But this is the one with the seatbelts, which I just thought was kind of odd.
It was like a last minute thing.
He was sort of tapering off with the gimmicks. I think he was sort of losing his appetite for them.
Yeah. But the idea for listeners is, imagine it's a shock seat where so you don't get up and run away. You actually had a seatbelt on your movie theater seat. I'm thinking, what? That
You're right. It's like the gimmicks are dying down. Yeah.
I'm wearing one right now, by the way, just to say
that. Wise move. And I saw what you did. He actually says, William Castle warns you. This is on the poster. It says, this is a motion picture about uxoricide? UXORICIDE.
What does this mean?
It's a fancy way of saying a man killing his wife.
Yeah, I know. Let's Kill Uncle had like a thing like that, or like it's killing of a uncle, whatever that scientific phrase means.
I think it's a great plot, though, where you got these two teenage girls who are, doing just prank calls and just randomly calling people in the phone book. They get someone who, would you believe, just murdered his wife. And the girls, not knowing this, say, I saw what you did. And then the murderer ends up tracking them down. And I really love that movie.
Yeah, it's a cool idea.
Now, there was some controversy about this, right? Like the phone company, they got pissed off.
People were really doing it?
No, that there were it started a lot of crank calling. And the phone company and the phone monopolies were all pissed off about that, and they said
good publicity.
Yeah, well,
really.
Hey, there you go. Another way to the seatbelts don't think well. The phone company will help, So,
but then by the time you got into the late '60s, things were changing, and then by the time you got to Castle buying this property, this particular book, the rights to this book, which everybody was after, right? And he got it first.
Well, Castle wanted the respect as a filmmaker. And he never felt like he was getting the respect because he had become kind of a cartoon character, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But he looked to Hitchcock and he was envious of the respect that Hitchcock was getting. So he was looking for a project for himself to direct, that he could kind of prove to the world that he was a master filmmaker, right?
Right.
And he did have the ability to make good films. There's no doubt about it. He was a good director. He actually heard about the galleys to this book that hadn't been published yet, called Rosemary's Baby. And he got the galleys and he took it home and he read it and he just became obsessed with it. And then, of course, he gave it to his wife because she had to okay everything, because they were going to personally vouch for this property. They were going to, again, like with Macabre, he was going to mortgage the house to get this what he wanted.
To buy the rights to this.
Get the rights that had, and it wasn't on the bestseller list yet. No one knew. So the wife read it and she said, okay, Bill, I agree with you. Let's do it. So he did end up getting the rights. And when he went to Paramount, where he had a deal, he went to Robert Evans, who was running the studio. And he said, and Robert Evans wanted this property really bad. And he said, okay, we'll do this movie, but you can't direct it. There's this new guy. He's made a few movies in Poland, and we think he's the perfect director for this, and his name is Roman Polanski. And at first, Castle was furious because this was his baby. He optioned it. He saw the potential in it. He wanted to make this as a movie. But then he saw some of Polanski's films, and he met Polanski, and he realized what a genius this guy was. And then Polanski ended up being the director of this, and William Castle was the producer. And the movie is completely different than what it would have been if William Castle had made it. I'd love to have seen Castle's version.
True. In alternate reality, I would love to have seen both. Like, I would love to have both versions.
Yes, but not the same kind of approach. And Castle was a great producer and protected Polanski from the studio. Gave him what he wanted.
Yeah, because didn't Polanski kind of go over budget? He would like be a stream of content. Like he would just film everything.
Think about it, guys. William Castle had been known for being the guy who's on budget and on schedule, okay, and not getting all touchy-feely.
He's never known as the auteur. No, it wasn't like that.
Have this really creative guy who's doing 20 takes, 30 takes, 40 takes, and yes, he insulated.
But that shows him again. Like I find interesting that yes, he was super bummed that he didn't get to direct it, but all throughout his career, trying to gain that A-list kind of level. but smart enough to know that, okay, look, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Let Polanski do it. And he's the producer of the movie. And Rosemary's Baby in a lot of ways probably is his highest achievement as far as like a classy film, whether it's horror or whatever, you know?
Yes. And it's great that it happens to be horror.
Yeah, right.
The unfortunate part is that he was not really able to parlay it into more things for him.
Yeah, that's what's interesting to me. Like, I think you guys go into this in your documentary too. Like, as the 70s come around, it's just like somehow Castle's just not in step with the new decade. You know,
understand too, like how old he is and how much he's been through. And Rosemary's Baby did take a big toll. Look, the guy, he always had that cigar. You know, the guy been smoking
old
for years.
School Hollywood, yeah.
But so he at this time he really wasn't in the best of health, right? Jeffrey?
No, he wasn't. And you know, Terry Castle, his daughter, talks about the Rosemary's Baby curse. Right. And I don't know if I believe that there was a Rosemary's Baby curse. However, a lot of bad things happened to a lot of people involved with that movie. And you can figure that out on your own.
Composer died, Sharon Tate.
Roman Polanski's wife was murdered. And William Castle, you know, after that movie came out, it was a very taboo subject. You did not make movies about the devil.
Which is so interesting, though, because even though it was like this huge hit, and the whole Satanism was becoming so in vogue, you know, in pop culture. It was, though, you know. But it's interesting that movie got tainted like that. You know?
It's also not. To be fair, it's not a movie that says, "Isn't Satanism great?"
Well, no, of course not. But, you know, but it's just interesting that the fact that the movie was such a phenomenal hit. And I mean, I still love all of Castle's stuff. I even have his next movie, Project X, on Blu-ray. It's such a weird.
I saw it for the first time last night.
I wouldn't say it's a great movie, but it's a movie that it was made in 1968. It looks like it could have been made in 1958. It's so bizarre.
It looks like an episode of Time Tunnel.
Yeah, it's strange, like thriller / sci-fi that involves like cell animation in it, and it's so low budget. And it's true when you watch, like, this was the follow up to Rosemary's Baby.
That's
Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah,
that is the sad thing about it. You know, he had done Rosemary's Baby. He did have, you know, major health problems after Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
His daughter felt like he had opened up a door to some kind of evil, and then the evil was brought into his life, right? And she really does believe this. And in that family, you're not allowed to have any devil products or anything that references Satan in a jokey way. You know,
you know,
they're not. They don't have a. She does not have a sense of humor about Satan, right? So, but you know, Rosemary's Baby, huge, gigantic, massive hit. And yes, like you said, Sean, that was the follow up. Project X, back to his cheapo roots, right?
Yeah.
So he never was able to really parlay that. He did try to make an art movie,
which I actually like and appreciate. Even though it's a flawed movie, I think it's a fascinating movie and so unique, and that is Shanks.
He tried to, you know, after Rosemary's Baby, he was like, I'm gonna get a chance to make my art movie. So he found a property called Shanks, which was about a puppeteer and bringing dead bodies back to life and mime. And it's a very strange kind of fairy tale kind of story.
Yeah.
And for the casting of that, actually a great gimmick was to cast the world's most famous mime, Marcel Marceau, who was selling out major amphitheaters.
The 70s, he was huge.
Yeah. I saw him perform live.
Wow.
It was amazing.
And Jeffrey, just the fact that you got Marcel Marceau in your documentary, which is amazing. I mean, it's fascinating. Listen to him talk about that.
That was so awesome.
We were so lucky to get him. So Marcel Marceau plays the lead in the film. That was his first role as an actor, lead role as an actor. And it's called Shanks. And, you know, I would love for people to see this movie because it's fascinating. There's no other really movie like it because it has these tensions of being an art movie, but then also an exploitation movie because there's like a motorcycle gang in it and all this crazy stuff. But Castle, that was the last film he made as a director.
Right.
And he and Marcel Marceau got along beautifully. And Marcel Marceau, I was very lucky to interview him because he lived in France and he was in LA performing.
Wow.
And we got to interview him during his run here in LA. And I went to see him perform. I feel so lucky.
That's awesome.
Like you, Larry, that we got to see him. And he loved William Castle. He had such a fond feeling for him.
Yeah.
He almost looked at him as sort of like making a silent film because he was a movie with a mind.
Yeah. Really.
So Shanks came out, landed with a dud. And,
and Paramount didn't really get behind it either, right? They just kind of like discarded it. Like, didn't even,
nobody cared.
Yeah. I know that he did, like, he created this TV series, Ghost Story.
Yes.
Which was like an anthology series, later became known as Circle of Fear. Sebastian Cabot is the host, kind of your Rod Serling host. And that show actually has some interesting, it's hit or miss. Some of episodes are quite weak, but there are some really great ones too.
Yeah.
It was kind of like almost like a later Night Gallery in some ways, But other than that, and then of course I know he produced Bug, which I love,
which is glorious.
But talk about a curse being released on the day of the Jaws came out. Also must have doomed that movie. But that was
what would you rather see? Something about a shark called Jaws, or something about a bug called Bug?
I do love Bug though.
I saw both.
Yeah, exactly.
There's room for everyone.
Right.
Yes, Bug was, he wanted to do a gimmick for Bug. And this is, by the time the Bug came out, those gimmicks were long in the past. But he talked about it and doing the gimmick for Bug, which would have been little, kind of like little windshield wipers by your feet, so that it would feel like there's bugs crawling across the reef. But by the time that movie was made, and in the theaters that movie showed in, you probably didn't need to have fake bugs running over your feet.
Exactly. That's right.
Well, it's kind of ironic that the director of Bug, Jeannot Swart, ended up directing Jaws 2.
Right.
He went to see on opening day, right?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Jeannot Swart, who also loved William Castle, and some of the people I got to interview for the doc, they were such sweet guys. And
my gosh,
they had such love for William Castle, and they loved talking about it.
I love listening to Dwayne Hickman talk about the Tingler because he's so amused by it. It's kind of like Roger Corman when people talk about Corman. Like Dwayne would say, how Castle never wanted to pay anybody, but you did the movie anyway because Castle was so endearing and charming. He got a lot out of his charm,
Everybody loved his company.
Yeah.
I learned from your documentary is that he would just draw people to him.
Yeah. No, I feel like I've never met him, of course, but I feel like I got to know him during the course of it. When you make a movie like this, you just immerse yourself in somebody's life and you're constantly hearing their voice and you're digging and finding things. Like we found a lecture he did at USC for film students. And you could tell the students at the beginning were, he would talk about some of his older movies and they were kind of laughing at him a little bit, but then he turns them around and he gets their respect by the end. And it's a great lecture and anyone who wants to be a filmmaker and or a producer, and I produced my own movie, so I learned a lot from William Castle. If you're a filmmaker, that's part of the job. You don't just get to, make your art. You've got to sell it, and you've got to be a hustler, and be a hustler. And when we did Spine Tingler, I was also making a small little independent documentary, and I was paying for it myself. So I had to figure out a way to make sure I could sell this thing, get the attention it needed. So when we did and I'm not necessarily a guy who loves being the center of attention, right? But I knew I had to channel William Castle and I had to get the attention I needed for Spine Tingler, which premiered at the AFI Film Festival. So I got one of those Tinglers that you were talking about.
That's right.
And I strapped it to my back. And on the opening night of the AFI Festival, I was going down the red carpet with the Tingler and everybody wanted to interview me because of that just hunk of plastic on my back.
And sometimes the simplest things,
Tom Cruise is 30 feet away doing interviews for his movie, The Lions and the Lambs, or whatever that thing was called, that nobody remembers, right?
Should have used EMERGO in that movie.
Could have used it. But I learned something, I had a cigar and I wore a suit and I had my Tingler and I channeled William Castle and got a lot of attention. So every festival that we did for that movie, I had that outfit and we would hire nurses in every city. And I bought some nurse outfits and insurance policies. We reprinted them. And in every city, in advance, I would talk to the festival and they would find a couple of volunteers, lovely young women who would come and
That's
dress
awesome.
in the outfits and would give out the insurance policies. And I've got a ton of pictures of every city with all these different nurses. It was so much fun. I had such a great time going out on the circuit a la William Castle. With
Speaking of live events, we skipped one that I think is amazing and very important when it comes to William Castle's showmanship. And that was a play that involved Orson Welles and Hitler.
Oh,
You could elaborate on that story.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, well, William Castle was also a theatrical producer. Let's see if I can remember the details.
In his early career, right?
In his early career, and he needed a leading lady for this play. And he had an actress named Ellen Schwanecke. She was a German actress who was in America, and she had been invited back to Germany by Hitler. This was in the early mid-30s. And she was invited back to Germany, but she said no to Hitler. And it got a lot of press, the girl that said no to Hitler. Right. And Castle put her in his play, and she was the star of the play. So he needed a little bit of extra publicity. So one morning, the town wakes up and they find swastikas painted on the outside of the theater. Oh my God. There are Nazi sympathizers who don't want this show to go on. We're going to get a lot of press over this. And he did, about this new play that you could go see, and the star that said no to Hitler. Now, who painted those swastikas? Very interesting.
Interesting.
So I don't have any proof, but I have a feeling that we know who painted those swastikas. You know, a Jewish man painting swastikas. Oh my gosh,
that is just hilarious.
And so I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another of the pre-movie gimmicks.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, because I've heard rumors that this big gimmick came before there was an actual play.
Yeah, that's possible. I don't remember that details. Those are the cobwebs of my mind. But I would not be surprised, because like Roger Corman and many other exploitation filmmakers, he came up with the poster before the movie.
Or the title of the movie before we have a movie,
before the movie. So I think, like we talked about before, I think a lot of the gimmicks did come up before the movies.
Yeah. So Jeffrey, by the time of the 70s, like after Bug and Ghost Story, I know his health wasn't well, but were there other projects or movies that he was planning to do?
Well, yeah, the world really changed. I mean, after Night of the Living Dead and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all those those are real horror movies, right? I mean, the world changed, the country changed, assassinations, social unrest, rioting around the country. It was just a different time. But he tried to stay in the game, and he did continue to work, but he never was really able to regain that momentum he had after Rosemary's Baby. Mm-hmm. I think the last movie that he wanted to make was he got the property, a book about an apartment building, a super modern apartment building that was haunted, or there was a murder in it, or something like that. And there was even some artwork that was mocked up. We show it in the documentary, but that was never made. Terry Castle, his daughter, told me that he did have some properties. There was a book called The Mind Thing, a sci-fi book. Forget the author, but Castle wanted to do that.
So he was still hustling, still trying to find property.
Yeah. Constantly. He's just one of those guys. He was always hustling. Terry told me that at one time, this is much earlier, but he had his eye on the James Bond books to do as a movie before the Saltzmans and the Broccoli's got their hands on it. I would love to see.
What would have been the gimmicks for a James Bond movie? William Castle, James Bond.
And the natural is the ejector seat.
There you go. Some seats in the theater will be ejector seats.
Yeah. Ejector seat. You're joking.
Wow, that's interesting.
Now, Terry Castle.
He never gave up wanting to just continue to make movies and make people happy. And that's one of the things I love about him. It was always about the audience. It was always about making people happy. It was about giving people an experience, and there's something just so pure and joyful about that. And I love that about him.
If he was still around today, I think he would appreciate, I think he's got, like you said, he's become more well-known and appreciated now, way after his death. But I think he is a brand name, and with horror films and monster fans, he is like your friendly big uncle,
Right. And a lot of directors have kept his legacy alive, like John Waters, and then Joe Dante with Matinee, which is very much William Castle. And that's beautiful. I mean, he's touched so many of us. He's made us the monster kids that we are.
Something that I really loved about the man was the that I understand that he had lost his parents at an early age. He was about 11 or 12. He had lost both his mom and dad. Was basically orphan. And as a struggling orphan kid, was actually at 15, kind of get involved in theater and stuff. But the thing that I thought was so touching was he was a dedicated family man. Because he had lost his parents, he was a very dedicated family man. He and his wife were married all the way till he passed away. He loved being with his kids and his wife. And he always felt that in a way he didn't deserve her because she was so great, but he was very much a family man. And in that day and age of Hollywood, I thought that said a lot about the guy.
Sweet, yeah.
Yes, he was not a guy going to the big parties. He would rather be home, hanging out with the kids, and his wife, Ellen, who was a wonderful, lovely person, outlived him for many, many, many years. And in fact, I did get to meet her. She lived to be quite elderly, but she had Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. And she was living a few miles away from Terry and her family, and living in her apartment, very well cared for, but her mind was not there. But I went to visit her, and we sat and we talked with her, and I told her about what I was doing and how much I love Bill, and what a special relationship they had. And I'll never forget that experience, because she I don't even know if she knew I was there. But I looked at her right in the eyes, and we were talking, and it was very, very touching, because I feel like Bill was with us in that moment when we were talking.
Great.
That's awesome.
Wonderful.
That's awesome.
Well, guys, this has been great. Jeffrey, thank you so much for being with us to go over this. The Spine Tingler, The Life of William Castle. It's such an amazing, wonderful documentary that you did. Thank you so much for doing that. And thanks for spending time with us.
Yes.
But I know you're working on a bunch of things. Can you tell me, there are a couple things you're working on that I'm really looking forward to? There's actually something about Showgirls that you're working on.
Yeah, I think sometimes the failures are more interesting than the successes, right?
Okay, so I remember that publicity campaign. I remember going to Blockbuster, and they actually had a VHS cassette that would show you some quick scenes of the film.
This is the 1995 Showgirls.
It's going to blow your mind. So I remember this, and I remember seeing the film, and I thought, you're working on a Showgirls thing?
Well, it's connected to William Castle, right? I mean, Paul Verhoeven is a showman, and he wanted to make he wanted to make a big, expensive NC-17 blockbuster, and that's a gimmick, right? He was going to get a teenage, squeaky clean star, Elizabeth Berkley, and get her to play a stripper, take all her clothes off in a big dirty movie for the masses. What is a better gimmick than that, right? So our documentary, which we're making now, and we filmed it and we're editing now.
Oh my God!
Oh my gosh! So you probably like all those stories with like Joe Esterhaus and stuff, and
Joe Esterhaus is in the film. We have a ton of it. I think even if people haven't seen Showgirls or are familiar with it, it's a great story, because it is about these guys who were really shooting for the sky, with this movie. They had just come off of making Basic Instinct, which is massive hit makers. And Verhoeven was always trying to push the envelope and make a movie that was very misunderstood at the time. It's more of a satire than people give it credit for.
Much like
Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers, right?
Absolutely, another misunderstood masterpiece. We love that movie too. So I was fascinated with it, and also fascinated with Elizabeth Berkley and the journey that she went through, and how she was, when the movie was a failure, she was really shamed.
I remember.
That's our film was going to talk about that whole experience. For her. So it's in the works.
Do you interview these people?
Many of them. I'm not going to give away exactly who and who's not yet in the movie.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Greg Travis, who we've had on our show.
Oh yes, I love Greg Travis.
Yeah, he's been a friend of mine forever, because I did stand up for over 30 years, and we'd bump into each other. But it's interesting when I watch that movie, because it seems like in a lot of the movie, it seems like he's the only one who's playing it pretty straight.
Yes, he gives a great performance. We did interview him for this. I'll tell you that much. Yes, for Greg Travis, he came in and he would sort of ask Verhoeven for directions, like, "Am I doing this the way you want?" And Verhoeven would say, "You know what to do." So Verhoeven would hire the right actor for the right part. Now, he didn't do that with Elizabeth Berkley. With Elizabeth Berkley, he was very, very in there, and everything she does in that movie, every gesture, every line reading, everything is exactly what he told her to do.
Really?
So,
interesting.
That's part of the story, is that she was blamed for this quote unquote bad performance, but I don't see it that way at all. She was doing exactly what he wanted.
So what's this documentary called? What's the title of it?
It's called GONIS, The Fall and Rise of Showgirls. And we have been in editing for a while. We got a little bit of a kick in the butt with COVID, and it got us off track a little, but we're going to get back on track next year. We're filmed and then everything's in the can, and we're editing, and we'll get there. With these movies, they just take as long as they take, but we'll get it out there.
Is there another one too that you're working on?
I'm always working on a handful of movies. It's just the way of the world. I've got one that actually was just released. It's not commercially available yet, but it will be soon. It's called Boulevard, a Hollywood Story. And it's a doc about Gloria Swanson, who starred in Sunset Boulevard.
Oh my God.
And it's about the moment in time where she decided, again, older actress, not necessarily getting any jobs after Sunset Boulevard, even though she was nominated for an Oscar. She decided, I'm going to make a musical version out of Sunset Boulevard. And
you're kidding.
Not at a time
back then?
Yes, and nobody really did this back then. It's very now it happens all the time.
Right.
But she had the idea to do this, and she hired these two guys who were a gay couple, Richard Stapley and Dixon Hughes, and the three of them wrote an entire musical version of Sunset Boulevard.
Oh my God.
Which was never produced. Wow. It was never produced for various reasons that you'll see in the movie. But the documentary is really the story about this almost love triangle between the three of them and this disaster of an attempted musical. And then what happens to all of them after it falls apart.
Oh my God.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Sounds great.
Fascinating.
That's on the
Will that be an EMERGO?
I never thought of that, but now that you've mentioned it.
Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
I think we should do a little
wonderful.
Really delightful. And if you ever want to come back, we'd love to have you again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I just love to raise my glass and let us toast Jeffrey Schwartz and the genius of William Castle.
Nice.
Cheers, gentlemen. Thank you for keeping the monster stuff alive.
You got it.
Our pleasure.
Time for a listener shout out.
Shout out.
Shout out.
Shout out. Oh.
Yeah. Yes. Recorded in shout out. Oh.
This goes out to our friend and listener, Tom Frank in Los Angeles.
Oh, Tom Frank. Oh, we love him.
We had the opportunity to chat with Tom at the last Monsterpalooza we did.
Yeah,
That's right.
And his daughter is such a wonderful artist, Miranda.
Yes,
indeed.
yes.
And Tom is now the proud owner of a Monster Party t-shirt.
Cool.
Classic logo, glow-in-the-dark t-shirt. Tom, thank you for your purchase and your support.
Yes.
Just in time for Thanksgiving.
Yes,
Right.
indeed.
Thanksgiving, no.
Thanksgiving, no.
And hey, the glows in the dark, that's a gimmick too, right?
Sure.
It is.
That's right. Yes.
You can still find some t-shirts at our Monster Party store on eBay, which is called Monster Party Store. We also have the cloth PPE masks available.
Yes. Cool. Yes, we do.
So you want to get those while they're hot.
You want to get them. Just get them. Just get both.
Yeah.
Or you know what? If you know several people who fit a large t-shirt, we might have a sale for you.
That's right.
Oh. They make great holiday gifts, I'll tell you.
Yes, they do. Yes, they're great stocking stuffers.
And we will be replenishing our stock of things soon, and we will certainly make the announcement. You can take that to the bank. And if you are, I know our listeners are anxious for when are we going to have more caps in different sizes and all that.
We'll get on that.
We're on it. We're on it. We haven't forgotten. And if you happen to be a Patreon member, we will also throw in free goodies.
What?
Courtesy of Jason Lindsay and Biff Bang Pow Toys.
Oh,
and
good.
Ted Haynes, our friend Ted Haynes, monster creator extraordinaire.
Lovely man. Very talented.
Yes, indeed. So what is the Patreon thing all about, Matt?
What is this gimmick Patreon?
Patreon-o.
It's no gimmick, is it?
This is what you do. You get into an electrified chair. You sit in front of your computer and you go to patreon.com. And what Patreon is it is a platform where when you join, you now have access to bonus material from Monster Party. So you get bonus audio, bonus video, you get special shows just for Patreon, like Larry's Toy Time and Monster Party Masterpieces. And we throw in some other things. We just did a special interview with Dr. Z.
That's right.
Which is, you cannot miss this. You have to. If
so
you're going to join, just join for that. But join for all these wonderful items that we're giving you. It really is the cherry on the sundae that is Monster Party.
Well, it sounds very expensive.
You know what? I'm getting tired of you saying that.
Well, that's a coincidence.
I am sick of this.
I'm getting tired of saying that.
James, go to the coward's corner and just sit there for a while, okay? Just follow the yellow lines, sit in the corner.
I was going to say the cheapskates corner. You know.
Yeah.
Well, here you go. This is going to be a shock to everyone, but guess what? It's only $5 to join. $5.
Is that like five? Is it like 5 Zots coins?
Right? Yes.
Okay.
You can't buy a ghost viewer.
Oh, wow.
No, those are big bucks nowadays.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. But $5 will get you access to all these wonderful things, and it's money well spent. And we're not responding to inflation. It's been $5 and it's going to remain $5.
Right.
How do you like that?
For eternity.
Beauty. Nice.
Hey guys, if you remember last time, I think I mentioned Alex Callens, our friend from Playboy TV. He was the guy who did Wedgie Wednesdays.
Oh, yeah, I miss him.
Yeah. But again, he's like us. He's a huge horror fan, and he's been working on this horror film that he wants to do. And he's put together this great story called Dead West, The Devil's Assassin. It's like a horror Western. Nice. And guys, he's launched a financing campaign through Indiegogo. And what you can do is you can go to YouTube and type in Basement Productions HQ. It'll take you to the site. And there you can watch this whole video that shows all the stuff that they've done already to make this. They are going to make this in January, despite whatever they get from people on the outside to finance this thing. Cool. But you go to this link and it'll take you to the Indiegogo site where you can make a donation, and then you can get your name in the credits. Wow. And but guys, the campaign, his whole campaign ends December 9th. So if you want to throw a young, talented filmmaker a few bucks so he can make this horror film, you only have until December 9th of 2021. Okay. But they're scheduled to start shooting in January of 2022. And, I'm going to support, and I think you should check it out. Cool. But so please help support Alex and his team of young filmmakers make Dead West, The Devil's Assassin.
Ooh.
Yeah, pretty cool. And by the way, I just want to give a little shout out to our sponsors at Creature Features. Hey, Taylor White and Creature Features. Look, Creature Features is still on eBay. You can go to type in C-Features for stores on eBay. And there, guys, they have all kinds of toys and signed CDs, DVDs, magazines, masks, models, statues, books like that great Rod Serling's Night Gallery, The Art of Darkness book. Remember that book, guys?
I do.
So
beautiful. Yes,
gorgeous.
They still have just a few more left, but guys, you should go to C-Features on eBay. Check it out. They've got a lot of great stuff that would make some fantastic holiday gifts.
In fact, I just bought something from them. I got an extra copy of the Frank Woodward Lovecraft documentary.
Guest on our show.
Yes, that's right. Because my brother also enjoys Lovecraft, so I'm
nice.
I owe him a birthday present, so I'm putting together a little Lovecraft package.
That's a good thing he doesn't listen to the show, because then he'd know what you're getting.
Right. No, he's not going to listen to the show.
Spoiler.
Yeah. There's no worry about that. Right. Yeah, he's still working out email.
My family listens to our show. Maybe you should talk to your family about listening to our show.
Yeah, I've tried. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, well. That's going to make for a great Thanksgiving holiday at your house, I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah. And that's, speaking of Thanksgiving, this is our Thanksgiving show. And, listeners might ask, well, how does William Castle fit into Thanksgiving? Well, I would say that he made so many films that you could take that Thanksgiving holiday and just do what we tell you to normally do when it comes to viewing stuff on Thanksgiving. Sit there and start chronologically. Just go through them all.
Yeah.
And I say go through all of them. Go through the Westerns, go through the Whistler movies, and just sit there and just eat turkey and pie and unbutton your pants.
But make sure you're insured by Lloyd's of London.
Yes, you must be insured by
watching one of these movies because it could happen. You never know.
Right? No, that heart attack could happen. Hire a nurse.
Strap into a seatbelt.
Yes, get your seatbelts. Yes.
One of the extras on Spine Tingler, I love when John Waters was talking about when he went to see Macabre. As a little kid, he literally was like, "Oh, I want to go see it because somebody could die while watching the movie." Like that's why he was going to see it in the theater. He was hoping to see somebody die.
And then when he went to see the Tingler, he was looking under the seats for the buzzer.
Yeah, like how he really wanted an actual Tingler. It's true. Like, I wonder if anybody has like the actual mechanism that makes the Tingler. Like somebody still has that today.
And again, every one of the things that he was bringing up, like the cardboard axe.
Yes.
I would love. So fun, man. It's just
And listeners, if you haven't seen that documentary, you've got to see it. Good. It's so great. It's so wonderful.
One of the unused extras is he interviews Joel Silver because they end up making the Dark Castle remakes of like when they did like the remake of House on Haunted Hill and 13 Ghosts. But I mean, Joel Silver was a huge fan of William Castle and was influenced by him too. So yeah, it's definitely worth watching that.
And isn't it true that those movies now have a little bit of a following? Like I know a lot of
the remakes they do.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about them.
Bring them up.
The funny thing is Terry Castle was involved in those too. Right. And they just tried to put a new spin on it. And
they're a little bit, I mean, I'd have to reassess them, visit them again now, but I think there may have been a sequel to the House on Haunted Hill remake too. I think you're
right.
So but I haven't. Yeah, it's interesting because so many of those concepts and ideas for the plots for some of the classic Castle films kind of were pretty unique and would make. I'm surprised people aren't remaking more of them. To be honest.
Well, we were
not that we needed to be remade, but I'm surprised.
Sure. But you were briefly talking about Project X, which I watched for the first time last night. And one thing I have to say is that there are some very interesting concepts in it.
It's actually incredibly idea-wise. It's a very ambitious movie. It's so strange, but it's just like you said. It really looks like an episode of an Irwin Allen film from the '60s, Irwin Allen TV show.
Right,
it's really weird, but
they never made a proper biography of William Castle, for better or worse. But looking at all the clips of him, I thought, man, John Mahoney from Frasier would have been so good. Because he just looks so much like him.
Yes.
But if they ever do, in terms of just somebody who looks just like him. Jason Segel from How I Met Your Mother.
Okay.
Like, I could totally see him playing William Castle. He looks a lot like him. And I just, I don't know why it's sort of like Val Kilmer doing Jim Morrison. I just sort of like, man, he should play him. He looks like him.
Yeah.
So my vote, if there's anybody ever listening out there who's going to make a William Castle biography, approach Jason Segel and make a package out of it.
Well, and at the time, I thought the 1993 film Matinee, I thought John Goodman did a pretty good job of playing a very William Castle-like character.
Yes, sure, yeah.
But the thing is, it's so John Goodman. You know what I mean? It'd be nice to see somebody tackle and inhabit that character of William Castle. Right. And I could see something like that almost being a mini series because his career was so long and there were these different chapters of it.
There's really interesting stuff like in that documentary too. Like he was like really good friends with Cary Grant. It's like I mean, just the people he hung out with and how people he influences. Yeah, it really is a unique Hollywood career.
And the whole Rosemary's Baby thing. I mean, the documentary made me realize that Castle was a maverick. Had a career of being a maverick, but here in this producer's role, where the stakes were so high on this project, he had to run interference between two other mavericks. Polanski and Evans. And so suddenly he's walking
just to navigate those waters at that time is pretty pretty impressive.
All right, it's time to remind our listeners that you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Monster Party TV, our Twitter handle at Monster Party HQ. That's also our Instagram handle, Monster Party HQ. And please take a moment, write a review on whatever platform you're listening to us on that takes reviews, because we would love to hear from you and we will read it on the air.
Yeah, we will read it in Rito. On that note, I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm Shawn Sheridan.
I am Larry Stroth.
And I'm James Gonis.
Keep America strong.
Watch all the films of William Castle.
And have a happy Turkey Day.
Experience it in Thanksgiving. Oh.
Let's let James in.
James coming. James is also connecting to his audio. We know how that's going to go. There he is. Hi.
Oh my gosh, it's James Gonis.
Hey. Jeffrey is here, but he's still connecting. Well, wait a minute. I think we got him. I see blurriness.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Hey. Oh, Jeffrey. Oh, this is so great.
Hey, monster people.
We're the monster people. Yes.
What a bunch of monsters.
Oh,
hey.
A perfect description.
Oh, wait, I'll show you something. You'll appreciate this.
Hey.
You've got a Rondo hat.
He's got a Rondo.
You've got a Rondo. Oh.
Congratulations.
Very
well
nice.
deserved. Well deserved.
You know, there's only a few people on this planet where I could just show this without even saying a word.
Hey, it's a Rondo.
Yeah.
This is for Spy Tingler.
Oh,
that's awesome.
It's
such a great
deserved.
documentary, by the way.
It's fantastic.
Excellent.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's a love letter.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
Sean, by the way. Hi,
That's Sean. That's James over there with the white background, and then Larry has got the calendars in the back, and I'm Matt with Jason and the Argonauts.
I always like to know what each day has in store for me. So it's like I'm like got to be in front of it, behind it.
And I want to escape into a fantasy world and never come back.
So, Jeffrey, look, thank you so much for being with us. I know you only have a certain amount of time, and I know you're a busy guy. You've got a lot of stuff going on. So I really appreciate it. So
absolutely.
Yes, the topic's going to be William Castle.
Wait a minute, what?
Okay, yes.
That was just Franco we were talking about today.
And look, the difference here, Jeffrey, is look, we don't always agree on stuff. And sometimes we get into some heated arguments. So that might make it a little different, okay? But to let you know a couple of things, what we're going to do is before we get started, we introduce who we are. We say what the topic is, and then we're going to introduce our guest. And once we introduce our guest, that's when we go to town. Okay,
let's go to town.
Yeah, we're gonna go to town. And if for some reason, because this isn't live, if we're going through and you say, you know, that John Waters was a dick. Oh, I don't want to say that. You know, it's okay. We'll stop. No. Matt and I have also worked with John Waters too, and he's wonderful. But I'm just saying, if you say
beyond lovely, my God,
if you say something, go, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that word. We'll stop. We'll just redo it, and because we'll edit it to make it sound like it's perfect and it's smooth, and you know, we just want to make you
that Forrest J. Ackerman. What up?
Oh, hey, no.
I love
come
a
on.
good Forey story.
No, now, come on now. Okay.
No, he's a lovely man with a few kinks of his own.
Look, hey, who amongst us doesn't have a few little issues? Okay.
Yeah, I think one of his issues was named Heidi.
Okay. Now listen. That we'll talk about that on another show, perhaps. Okay.
Well, nobody ever talks about the Golden Girls curse. You know, first Estelle Getty, then Rue McClanahan, then B. Arthur. Betty White
next? Oh my God!
She's got to be shaking in her boots.
Maybe she's the instigator of all of them. Maybe she's a witch. She's a witch, and she's like dive on.
Burn Witch Burn.
Burn Witch Burn. Yeah, it's like she's cleaning them all off.
Yeah.
Did you guys see in the documentary that there's a shot of William Castle and there's a framed picture of the Werewolf of London on his desk? Yes. And just the face of Henry Hull. And it's like, why does he have that on his desk?
I think that must have been, that looked like a publicity shot. I'm guessing maybe when he was doing I Saw What You Did, because that's Universal. Maybe they did like a shot of him. He was at a production office or something.
I didn't notice it. Was he in makeup? Was it as the werewolf?
It was like a close up of the black and white and full makeup.
The Henry Howell, yes.
Not his wife, not his kid.
Yeah. This is what I was saying.
Yes.
Picture of your family.
It must have been like
a little leave.
Yeah.
And then Henry Hall.
Yeah, that's funny.
Experience it in Thanksgiving. Oh.
Just
Couple more.
Indulge me one more time.
Why doesn't Larry do it? He would do a good job.
No. I like all four.
Turns. Yeah.
I like it because you've got an everyman quality to you.
Just do it
regular Joe. 20 more
regular
times.
Joe. Bubblegum Joe. All right, here we go.
Castle himself would not ask for this many takes.
That's true.
True.
No, but just
we're doing the Roman Polanski version.
Okay.
Yes, Roman Polanski version. You have to do it like Thanksgiving, though. You have to do it very exciting. Okay, go.
Don't put a curse on this episode.
Get me a fresh 13-year-old.
Oh, come on now. Come on.
That didn't happen.
We're cursed. We're cursed now. Okay.